So I spent the time, effort, and chances of me getting a girlfriend to play through all 87 BeamNG scenarios and rank them mainly on enjoyability. For those who don't know, scenarios are these quick, usually quick little missions that have you going through various, scenarios. Now, sadly, this will be done on a tier list. I know, but I'm only doing this because I'm not trying to do a numbered list and get into the specifics of every scenario, because then that'd be a waste of time and there would be a lot of ties, especially with how many of these scenarios just blend in together, as you're eventually going to see. So I felt like a tier list was just more appropriate to express how I felt about these scenarios. The tiers will basically be based on enjoyability and if I'd recommend playing them to others. Another thing I want to mention is that during the recording of this video, beamng shadow dropped update 0.32 as they normally do for some reason while I was recording footage for this video, so some things may have changed and the footage you're going to see will be from both 0.31 and 0.32, but mostly 0.31. Also, the more a scenario stands out to me, the more in depth I'll go into it. Now let's start off with the lowest tier, the F tier. F tier is the smallest tier, reserved for the absolute worst of the worst when it comes to scenarios. These scenarios are hot garbage, and I'm not kidding when I say this. I think these scenarios should either be reworked or removed entirely for the sake of everybody and their sanity. Alright, so first we've got Get Down. This scenario has you trying to get to the bottom of a really steep, rugged, and goddamn ugly mountain. Like seriously, you can tell this shit was one of the oldest maps with the low poly features and low quality textures, even on the highest settings. Now, getting down via slowly descending the mountain isn't really much of an option because the truck you have is a pretty basic model, so your only real option is throwing yourself off the mountain and praying to God you don't break something important like your drive shafts, engine, and to a somewhat lesser extent your radiator. You also gotta pray that your wheels don't get overly bent or break off your car, and that your car's body doesn't get too badly bent, and that you land upright on top of that. I did a quick Google search and I don't think I've seen a single person beat this without falling intentionally. So ultimately completing this scenario is a test of luck, a gamble if you will, and not a test of skill, which is why it ranks so low. You can either get really lucky like I did and complete it on the first few tries, or just not beat it at all. The other F tier scenario is Field Run. Now Field Run is difficult because of the choke points where the AI vehicle goes down the mountain and when the AI vehicle starts speeding down the straightaway. Now notice how both these choke points consist of the AI vehicle having to execute this scenario personally. That's because, I shit you not, you will fail the scenario if the AI fucks up in some way, shape, or form. You can't go too far behind or too far ahead of the AI, and this may not seem like a problem until it goes down the hill, and 9 times out of 10 it ends up flipping over while doing this, leaving you soft locked, because as previously mentioned, you cannot go too far ahead or behind the AI vehicle. And remember, we still have a second choke point to get through before completing the scenario, this straightaway. But ARG, you may be wondering, how is this difficult? Driving on a mostly flat straightaway is probably one of the easiest things you can do while driving. How could this be so hard not to mess up? Well, let me show you. That's right. If one of the two vehicles crashes, the scenario fails you. This includes the AI-driven vehicle, which, let me remind you, you do not control. And all of this has left me questioning how this ended up making it to the final version of the update this was released on, and staying like this for so long. Hell, it's probably still like this right now, as we speak. This is actually some of the worst game design I've seen in a while. Like, somebody had to come up with this idea, then somebody had to code this idea, then somebody had to playtest that idea, and except I don't actually think that's what happened, because then they would see how bullshit and unforgiving the scenario is, and then realize they shouldn't be put into the game, either that or have it be fixed. And seriously, when I said those two parts were choke points, I meant it again, because once again I got really lucky while doing this and I beat the scenario in my first few attempts. Last time I tried beating it, I would constantly fail to either the AI vehicle flipping over or crashing into the wall at the end of the straightaway. And in other scenarios, the AI tends to be pretty good, so I'm just going to make the big assumption that they haven't really developed a good off-roading / rallying AI, despite the devs dedicating like 3 different updates all within close proximity to each other to off-roading. Well, as close in proximity as major updates can get. But trust me when I say that this scenario and Get Down are bullshit and as bad as it gets. Alright, we're finally done with F tier and can move on to E tier. Expect the descriptions to get a lot less detailed going forward, because seriously, I'll go insane if I get into great detail about every single scenario. E tier is reserved for the scenarios I advise against playing, but not to an extreme degree like an F tier. These scenarios are either really painful to play through or extremely boring, such as Desert Hauler, where as the name suggests, you slowly, and I mean slowly, haul stuff through the desert. Like, the fastest you go for a majority of the scenario in the start is like 10 miles per hour, and I can probably run that on the treadmill. The only thing that's special about this scenario is that it might be the most boring scenario out of all of them. The second most boring scenario is probably electric hypermiling, which essentially has you driving really slowly. The main edge that this has is that you might get to do a turn here and there, and also the scenery of Italy. The same goes for hypermiling at the gas station. Guinea pig preparations is another really boring and long scenario that has an absolutely devastating choke point towards the end that can cause you to start all over again. Car delivery 2 led me on this wild goose chase, searching for the last checkpoint before I gave up. River crawl was just not fun to play. Also, it's really underrated in difficulty. Like, seriously, what the fuck? Mudslide Gladiator has you going through all these checkpoints, which is pretty aight in difficulty, and then this absolute curveball just gets thrown in the middle. Like, you really expect me to pass this? Slithery Drift may be a stretch. This footage was recorded in 0.31, and I heard the drifting point system change. But honestly, last time I tried beating this, I ended up going insane and spending 3 days trying to beat it, because if it's not inherently obvious yet, I play on keyboard. And finally, on the E tier, we have Freeform Mountain Crawl, which is probably the most difficult BeamNG scenario, assuming you don't get really unlucky in both F tier scenarios. This has to be one of the most difficult scenarios ever. This one has you basically crawl through some of the most rough and rugged terrain ever created in BeamNG, and you've got to persevere through a lot. Now, out of every scenario, this is the only one I've never beaten, and every attempt took minutes, each second probably sacrificing 100 megabytes of storage. Seriously, look at how much space all this footage took up. So I went to speedrun.com, because yes, there's speedruns for BeamNG scenarios, and I looked at the fastest time. Holy shit, the fastest time was over 8 minutes long. That's long enough to get your video properly monetized on YouTube. Anyway, if anyone wants to try speedrunning the scenario, then go ahead. There's only 2 runs on this, but 8 minutes, 36 seconds, and 580 milliseconds is probably the fastest I've seen anybody beat this. Alright, now we're moving on to D tier. This tier has the most scenarios out of all the tiers, however it is followed closely with C tier. D tier is so big mainly because it's where all the boring scenarios go. Not the mind-numbingly boring types like in E tier, but more like the ones that you try when you're bored, complete the scenario, and feel just as bored as you were when you started the scenario. This is what I meant when I said a lot of these were gonna blend together. So for these boring scenarios, we're gonna do a quick lightning round of all of them. Alright, so first off, you've got the delivery ones. Tanker delivery, gas runner, heavy machinery delivery, shipment shunter, supply delivery, garage to garage delivery Italy, garage to garage delivery East Coast USA, garage to garage delivery Jungle Rock Island, Skintia delivery, and finally Tasty Cola delivery. These all basically follow the same point of taking something from one place to another. Some of them are more challenging than others, but don't have anything special enough for me to enjoy them or hate them outright. Hell, some of these were so boring and forgettable, I actually nearly forgot to put 3 of these on the list. Oh, and also this happened while I was doing the garage to garage Jungle Rock delivery extras.
Guy. Yo, I want you to listen to the thing I just dropped in the general.
I'm recording.
Ah, man.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to this real quick.
I'm a satirable, spiritual, lyrical, miracle, individual, visual, spherical, imperial, empirical, like stocks, and it'll give me props, and I'm cleaning with a mop, and then I forget to mention this is real hip-hop, and I will cop the lyrics and shoot lyrical bullets at the ops. Yeah, I don't like none of that. Mumble, fumble, crumble, stumble, humble, rumble, rap. I rap amazingly, insanely. Crowd killer beast, rap Silent for the fun with a bum, I rap amazingly, insanely. Yeah, that I'm savingly from this industry, from all this tomfoolery, singing these raps. Machines things like bees, and it feels like Wu-Tang Clan killer bees.
This is gonna be the outro song, or something like that.
Are you listening to the second one?
I'm a satirical, spiritual, lyrical miracle, individual, visual, spherical, imperial, theoretical. Reel it and feel it and steal it and seal it and reel it and heal it.
This does sound like something Eminem would rap over.
I'm wearing Crocs and it will pop and it shall lock and drop.
I'll leave the context in the description or something, I don't know. Alright, so now for the rest of the boring ones. You've got Island Cross, Dam Jump, Spillway Climb, Target Jump Bridge, Gear Split Climb, Gavro Jump Course, and perhaps the most challenging one of them all, Beginning. Fun fact, this is how you gain the Beginner's Racing License badge, a badge that only 9.2% of all BeamNG players have according to Steam. That's less than senseless destruction. And with that concludes our lightning round of the most boring scenarios. The rest of the boring scenarios are Litter Liberator, where you go around collecting litter. And then there's Forest Cleanup, which is basically the same thing but in a forest and with a car that has a bathtub capable of carrying your mother. Platform Jump is rather unenjoyable than forgettable, and so is Tropical Toboggan. And while the AI struggles to go down a hill in Field Run, the AIs in Destroy the Moonhawk and especially Small Island Chase are really good at evading me for no reason. Either I got worse or the AIs got better in these specific scenarios, because I do not recall it being this hard to complete Small Island Chase. Like, these motherfuckers survived my pit maneuvers. And finally, we have Bank Robbery. C tier is the second largest tier. It's mostly scenarios that don't bore you to death or torture you enough that I advise against playing them, but aren't so great that I'd recommend trying them out. Police Patrol is mostly a chase scenario, but this time it's on a nice open road, so that gives you the advantage to catch up to the runner. Hidden Jump would be pretty difficult, aside from the fact that you can kind of just go over here and skip over the whole jump. Delivery Truck Takedown is honestly a 50-50 of if you beat it or not. You can try to stop the truck, which probably won't work, or you can wait for the truck to destroy itself. The same goes for Goliath. Why we have to have this? I heard something very loud. I just got hit by a runaway wheel.
What happened? What happened?
Airfield Showdown is a pretty easy drag race. Don't know why it's ranked as hard. Crawl Dried Up Riverbed is a rather generic scenario with crawling. Now, I know I pretty much insulted all the garage to garage deliveries, so what makes West Coast USA so much better? Well, it's mostly the map. So I find it more fun to drive on this map, which generally makes you more likely to drive on a paved road. Also, West Coast USA is my favorite map, so yeah. Collect Mountain was painful, but not engaging enough to end up in D tier. Knockaway Road mainly has you knocking down these signs, just like how Mike Tyson's gonna do it to Jake Paul on July 20th, motherfuckers. King Size also has a more unique scenario, but it's kind of boring, so it gets C tier. Soccer Pit 1 is also just barely engaging enough to not get D tier, because you kind of just push soccer balls or footballs or whatever the fuck you choose to call it into a pit. Car Trials is an absolute pain to get through. Seriously, whose idea was it to make an off-roading course for a hatchback from the 80s? So yeah, I kind of forgot to record this in the script and put it in there. There's this one called the Run for Life. It's got some pretty nice top view camera, type shit, like the old GTA. It's got the fucking cannons and shit. It's a very painful scenario to get through. I swear, it's not that fun, but I guess we can like C tier or something. Dirt Hopper, you just kind of speedrun your way down a dirt road, and I really don't see what else you want me to say about it. Hopping around is literally just island cross, but on a hopper, so the fact that it's on a hopper gives it some extra points. Rinky Dink, god, what are these names, is a beginner's crawling course, and honestly, while playing this, I was kind of getting sick of these because there was like 50 of these I played before getting here, and it really wasn't anything special aside from being like the easiest of all the crawling ones. Bootlegger's Revenge wasn't really special either, but I managed to one attempt it for the first time, so I probably got better. Dusty Dash is basically a collectathon through the desert. Once again, nothing special about it. Same with Warbler Trail. Small Island Sprint is basically supposed to be the easier version of Crankshaft Pass, but in the middle of it, there's just this cave that I don't think anybody knew existed prior to playing this scenario, aside from the 2 people who play on Small Island regularly. And it's really weird to get through. It's easily one of the most awkward things I've driven through in BMG. Dockside Dart is kind of just an endurance course, and so is Pessima Introduction and Nimble Pessima. Funny how the 2 Pessimas got their own introduction courses. Gravity Fuel was pretty solid despite not having you press the gas at all. Well, that is if you don't include the ending, and it's certainly more fun than the Rocky Start equivalent. Okay, we're done with the 2 biggest tiers, and we can move on to B tier. This is the start of the positive tiers. This tier is for the scenarios that I'd recommend to somebody if they wanted to have some fun. Not the best scenarios, but I think the positives help these out. Cinematic Chase is exactly what the name implies. A cinematic chase between you in an ETK 800 series and somebody else in an ETK K series. Ironically enough, your station wagon is faster than the fucking coupe for some reason, so this makes it a little too easy to end up on A tier. Pizza Delivery is a fun scenario that utilizes the Piccolina's size to a pretty big degree. Now, the description says, "Hey ragazzo, the boss wants you to drop off some pizzas, and you've got less than 3 minutes, and be sure to actually stop for the customer this time. Oh, and also some kind of protest is going on in the city, so you'll have to improvise. I trust you remember all the old shortcuts." The old shortcuts imply driving through alleyways, stairs, basically places a car isn't really meant to drive through, which is still pretty fun. Crawl around the bend I struggled with the most for some reason while recording, despite it being the second easiest of the 3 crawl challenges in this pack, I guess you could call it. It's a pretty solid challenge that gets you a good view of Utah. Like seriously, play this with some nice graphics, only if your computer can handle it though. Port Escape has an underwhelming beginning that the ending carries it though. Speedy Scramble is another collectathon like Dusty Dash, except this time it's actually fun with you racing through the city, dodging traffic, and also you're in a sunburst. Also, I'm gonna pull a Muye and beg the devs to please remake the sunburst. Oh, and refresh the I series too. Speaking of I series, Downhill Rally was a pretty long but also fun rally course, and it's an I series scenario, so that's also great. Flock of Pigeons is basically hunting in BeamNG, except you're armed with Victoria era cannons instead of a hunting rifle, and you're shooting at K-trucks instead of actual birds. It's a pretty fun scenario to try and aim your cannons. Quarry Triple Threat is a pretty solid course that serves as a quick scenario. Crankshaft Pass is a long course that I guess could be called rallying. The beginning is really mid, but I swear after this it gets better. The car you have is an off-roader that is rear-wheel drive. It's very difficult to control, but I guess that's where the fun of it is. It's something like riding a bull. That is, of course, if you're on keyboard. If you're on controller or a steering wheel, you'll probably be fine. Hoopty X Island, which is such a weird-ass title, is similar to Warbler Island. Pretty basic, but still pretty fun. Anyway, have you ever wanted to race a supercar on a highway? Well, consider trying out Highway Loop 1. Take the LA rite of passage of needlessly speeding down a highway. I swear, it's fun, but not as fun as it sounds. There's tight enough turns to make you go below 70 miles per hour, and keep in mind I test the speed of my custom cars on this exact same route, so I'm familiar with this, and even then I get carried away with the speed and end up catastrophically crashing. Super speed is you in a supercar chasing another supercar. Now, because the suspect is an 80s Italian supercar, all you really have to do is wait for them to spin out and crash, because that shit is a washing machine with how often it spins out. Jungle Rumble is a race in the the, you guessed it, jungle, where you race against other beaten up cars made to off-road. Except you're in a minivan, so you can kind of just crash into everybody and win the race pretty easily. I mean, there's no rules saying that you can do it, so I'm technically not in the wrong. I mean, is it immoral? Sure. But is it illegal? Nope. Also, this thing ate my frames. I was looking at a slideshow while playing this scenario. Like, how the fuck are my viewers gonna react to this? Spearleaf Loop is a pretty basic but fun time trial. Prospector's Return is an interesting rally course because it has you go into a mine tunnel where there's a hidden jump. I'll see if you can spot it. East Coast Chases 2 and 3 would have been an A tier if they weren't so easy. And finally, Mixed Surface Rally is another pretty basic but fun rally track, except this one has half the title length of your average isekai anime. Now we've been transported to another tier. A tier. This is the tier where I'd actually go back to some of the scenarios if I got really bored one day. The scenarios that are actually pretty good. The first one we have is Wild West Trail, a rally race between you and a bunch of other cars. You're pretty evenly matched too and have a pretty good track. Plus the views of the Utah map are pretty great on this one too. Overall, a pretty good scenario. Next up we have Asphalt Derby Race, a race between you and 3 other cars. And hey, this one didn't absolutely destroy my frame rate. It's a freeform race technically in terms of how you can approach the checkpoints with the lines, giving you an idea of how to go through them fastest. Also, you can fuck up the other cars. The BX in particular seems pretty aggressive towards the Covet, with it just crashing into it every time the race starts. Climbing Utah makes for a pretty solid climbing scenario, and I also managed to finally first attempt this, and I can say it strikes a nice balance of challenge. Same with the Crawl Leap of Faith one. I mean, to somebody else they may hate these crawling challenges because they're hard, but I don't think they're nearly as painful as freeform mountain crawl. Then we have East Coast Chase number 4, a chase scenario where you have to chase a cable company van, which is surprisingly pretty fast. Still don't make it safe for my pit maneuvering though. And finally, the last A tier scenario, East Coast Chase number 1. For me, this is easily the best East Coast chase of them all. It's not a total cakewalk like East Coast Chases 2 and 3, and you're not at a total disadvantage like in 4. You and the AI vehicle are pretty evenly matched, and the AI vehicle is pretty capable at driving. This means you have to be really good at driving in order to stop the vehicle. Still don't make it safe for my pit maneuvering though.
No. Ooh. Oh shit. Is he okay?
I'll let you decide. And finally, we're in S tier. The GOATs, the champions, the cream of the crop, the best of the best, BeamNG's finest, whatever you want me to refer to. These scenarios are my favorites. So let's get right into it. First we got Mountain Race, another pretty basic race that has a pretty fun course to drive through with 2 modded JDMs just to make it that much better. Just like in East Coast Chase number 1, the AI driver is actually pretty good at driving. Still don't make it safe for my pit maneuvering though. Huh. I guess it does. Auto Bello Piccolina Showcase is a scenario that is both tricky and creative. I love how the devs for both Pizza Delivery and Piccolina Showcase use the Piccolina's size to its potential. It is pretty tricky, but still fun to drive through with all the wacky obstacles. Seriously, there's an exact cutout of a Piccolina you gotta drive through. I don't think I've ever seen something so dedicated for a relatively underused car. Well, underused to my knowledge. I already know some Piccolina fans better be in the comments telling me that they're a Piccolina fan, so say it loud and proud. And finally, my favorite scenario of them all, Taken Treasure, is a scenario that puts you into the position of somebody who apparently took the treasure of the township of Fairwood, Maine. Yep, that's right, you're now Fairwood's biggest op. So now you gotta get the fuck out. Most scenarios would have you chasing people, except this time you are the one being chased, and the police this time are not fucking around. They've got roadblocks, patrol vehicles, and lots of them. It's probably the most aggressive I've seen the AI get in BeamNG, and maybe I'm just used to being chased, but I absolutely love this scenario. It's really fun slipping past all the police cars. It's essentially like getting 3 stars in GTA. Anyway, you drive to one location, then once you get there, you must escape the authorities, which I did by driving up this hill. Overall, a pretty fun scenario. And with that, we're finally done with the ranking. If you strongly disagree with some of these opinions and feel like they're inherently wrong, too bad. Go record yourself playing all 87 of these scenarios and rank them if you personally feel offended by the tier list. Anyway, that's besides the point. This video took a while to make, and this won't become my primary style of videos, mainly because it's a bit of work. But I'm also planning to make a Minecraft video that is pretty solid, although right now I'm not really sure of how to go about making it. I mean, I'm hoping that the editing will be better than my usual videos, and hopefully I can get it released. But that's all I have to say. Anyway, that's the end, I think.
I'm a satirical, spiritual, lyrical, miracle, individual, visual, spherical, imperial, empirical, theoretical, semi-empirical, yeah. Skip it, dip it, and flip it, and skill it, and rip it, and zip it, and will and feel it, and still it, and seal it, and reel it, and heal it, and bill it, and steal it, and mill it, and whoa. This is real hip-hop, and it don't stop, and it will drop. It's a rock, and still grow crops of lyrics, and do while wearing Crocs, and it will pop, and it shall lock, and grow like stocks, and it'll give me props, and I'm cleaning with a mop, and then I forget to mention this is real hip-hop, and I will cop the lyrics and shoot lyrical bullets at the ops. Yeah, I don't like none of that. Mumble, fumble, crumble, stumble, humble, rumble, rap. I rap amazingly, insanely, and I'm sanely from this